Welcome to the Scaleup Valley podcast, where we bring the best leaders in the world to help you scale from 1 million to 1 tree. As you know, we have started this podcast covering SaaS leaders on their journeys from 2 million ARR to 100 million ARR. And then we had another layer of guests from Qualtrics and from Box, who have been sharing their journeys from 1 million to 100 million to 1B. And now we are covering the 1B to 1 tree in a very special edition of the Corporate Scale podcast. And just for your information, the 1 tree is a joke. There is no company in the world who has ever reached the milestone of 1 tree in revenues. The largest company in the world at the moment is Walmart with $500 billion in revenues. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Telmo Fernandes, the country head at Emergn and former human resource director at Natixis Portugal. Telmo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me and for the invite.
It's a pleasure, and let's get to know more about yourself and a little bit of your career until joining Emergn.
Yeah, so I started in a startup. I worked and studied at the same time. It was a hardware developed company, and basically I did everything there, from human resources to commercial to everything. It was a really small company. We started with 3. We ended up reaching 50
Cool.
in around 3 years. It wasn't. Now looking back, it wasn't a big challenge. Then I went for a couple of industrial firms, big companies, also international companies. And I joined after that. I joined as an HR director, corporate HR director, Portuguese company named ProF. Were based in Portugal. They were working mainly in two countries, and after 7 years, we worked in 9 countries, and we had a huge growth also in terms of not only revenue but number of people, and the international dimension itself, the multiculturalism and all of those relevant things.
Right.
Sometimes we miss. Then I went to an amazing project, Natixis. We reached 700 people in 2.5 years. The plan was to go from 0 to 600 in 3. We settled in Porto, where I still live. And then there was the project, the opportunity of building something from scratch also. That is Emergn. In Portugal. When I say building from scratch, is in Portugal because Emergn already exists for some years. It's the final version, or the current status is of a merger between a consultant firm in digital transformation and an IT company, so a software developer company. And we are settling in Porto to grow. Company is still growing, has growth rates on average, not the exponential growth that we have in a lot of companies, but still currently it's around 20% a year, if during the merger, during the year of the merger.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we are.
That's awesome. And I think that you have an amazing experience, as you shared, with a startup from 3 to 50, then with a group in Portugal from going from 2 countries to 9 countries. And I believe that your experience with Natixis was really the moment of steroids in terms of growth for you, right? So going from 0 to 600 in 3 years, it's quite an incredible experience to have. And what do you think is the role of a world-class human resource director or chief people officer? So what's your position on what should be the growth of this role in a high growth company?
I think that there are 2 main points that are key: caring about the culture and focus. Because when you are growing that fast, when I say caring about the culture, it underlines the message of the people that you are hiring the people that you have on the company, and not waiving the principles of the culture of what you want to implement on the company, um, because of numbers, because you need to match the target, you need to reach it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the second point of that I mentioned, is focus not only on the culture that you want to implement, that the company wants to have, to keep consistency, because it's really easy to lose the track of this when you are in a very high speed process. uh,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
caring for the culture and be focused, not ever waiving the company culture because you need to reach the milestones.
This is a great point, and I promised to the audience that we didn't agree this before we start the show. The three critical ingredients to scale that we always discuss on the show. Number one, it's radical focus. Number two is world-class leadership, and number three is a culture of execution. So good that you're talking about culture and focus, and talking about culture, you're talking about people, right? So, which is kind of leadership. So going to the next point and starting with the first one, which is radical focus. So how do you assure that everyone that you keep repeating the same thing again and again, and you don't distract yourself with new rabbits when you are executing a specific strategy?
I think that at the moment, at least what happened with me, I was everything that all the measures, all the processes that we have implemented were always focusing on what it's the mission of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Saying this, I have a strange perspective. I think that it's quite easy to grow. I think it's quite easy to scale as long as you have that focus, because things happen very naturally, almost in almost in all of my experiences. Um, if you have that focus and if you think on the why you are doing it, and if you're doing it for the right reasons, it happens. To aggregate the team, you need to think of one of the things that you don't manage to do something like we have made just by yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
not only your team, the people that work with you, that report to you, or that you are able to directly influence, but also looking for your partners and your
Mm-hmm.
colleagues and your coworkers and stakeholders, um,
Right.
and engaging with them. It's not all the time. It's not Yeah, it's not all the time, it's not easy, because you need to engage with different cultures, different habits, people that basically what you are asking is to do something that goes against their, not principles, but their will, or that it will make them leave their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking as a global team and avoiding the silos that companies tend to have. And actually, when we're talking about exponential growth, I think that the silos happen even more naturally, that or as naturally as in already established and big companies.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're focused on your execution, and you're focused on yourself, and what will happen, will make you succeed, and not what will make the company succeed, what will
Right.
make you. So that happens also. We may think that startups or new companies don't have habits, don't have um, the
Right.
the adversity to change. But I really think that that also exists in companies that are small, scaling very fast. You focus on yourself, on your work, on HR, on finance, on IT, on hiring, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you keep track of the global purpose.
Yeah, so that's all about repetition, 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 and we tend to reinvent the wheel and talk about new things and start talking about another things that we need to do instead of just being obsessed about getting the things that we have in our agenda, in our strategic agenda, done. So in terms of structuring your own team, so going from this 0 to 400 people and almost to 600. So what were the different structures that you need to build in terms of to help your team to scale?
Yeah, it was from 0 to 700 into an.
700, okay.
It was
Even more amazing.
NIT that's crazy all over the place. It's not just Porto, or it's not
Yeah.
Porto, a big opportunity. Um, I would say that, or more than say, what we made was we were agile on, and when I say agile, it's not a concept, the traditional concept that we may already say that's traditional, although it's quite young or quite recent, but it's being very flexible and not, if it doesn't work, just change the approach.
Yeah.
The organization itself, I would say that one of the key points, we had several. I won't say I cannot forget, or I don't want to underestimate the role of everyone, because really everything and everyone is relevant to succeed. Um, but I would say that recruitment, the hiring process, the promotion of the
Right.
so talent acquisition, full process, the EVP, all of that flow, was key. So we partner with several. So also it's not easy, if not impossible, to reach these numbers just with an internal team, and mainly more than an internal team, an internal team that's just starting. So
Yeah.
we had several partners, several companies that partnered with us. We were quite agile on the process itself. Of course, we always made sure that the cultural point was being followed. We provide training to the hiring managers of what to target, how to do an interview, how to focus, what was key, not on hard skills, because those HR doesn't help that much. They're
Right.
doing their role, as no one can replace them, but very focused on culture, on the the traits that were key on hiring someone. Also, we gave them some support tools, not only the training, but being very very close to them every time. And the second point, I would say that when I say second point or second area, is the role of the people advisory team, or HRBPs, or human resources, being focused again on 2 points. One, HR doesn't manage people. We help managers, not managing, leading, uh,
Right.
and doing leaders, and improving our leadership skills. So
Yeah.
we ask them to focus on that, to focus on the new leaders that we had on the company. Not also at the same time not forgetting people. When I say people, it's the human side of the person, and all the people are equally within the team and within the company. So it's not because you're a junior developer that you'll be not only treated, but you'll have less time with them that you have with the leader. It's more the, on one side, help leaders to reduce the level of tensions and of problems that were raising. Second point, listening and active listening to people
Yeah.
when they share their problems, when they provide their information, their inputs, to create new processes. And I would say that, looking back, and it was something really natural. It's not something that was deliberate. It was, it wasn't need. We didn't need to think on it to do it.
Right.
But it was okay. If someone gives a good idea to change something that we have, let's change it. In a
Yeah.
corporate world or in a big company, I would say that's not easy, but that is my role, and it was the role of the senior leaders. It's our role to make sure, if a good idea is presented, and if we believe in it, so let's make it happen, even if it will challenge the status quo, and it will make people re-questioning and see it not the best positive way in the beginning. It's our
Yeah.
role to influence, to explain the why, and to make sure that we can make it.
Yeah. Um, it's very interesting that all the points that you have mentioned, and talking about the third critical ingredient, so the audience can understand where we are in the conversation. We started with understanding a little bit about Telmo, Then we went to what is a chief people officer, world-class chief people officer. What is the role of a world-class chief people officer? Then we discussed a little bit more of radical focus, world-class leadership, and now going to how do we inspire execution and how do we instill the culture of execution. So nowadays everyone is talking about, and you were talking about the concept of a child, of the dailies, weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, one-on-ones, town halls, or all ends meetings. So from your experience, what are the most valuable rhythms for you to keep everyone on the same page?
People tend to say that it's better to over communicate than not to communicate. I think that over communicate and not communicate are both bad. Because if you over, and we made that, or I made that in certain moments, because we're changing so many things and we want to share everything. When we say share, we decided
Right.
to find different approaches for different topics. But at the moment, people were just basically lost. They were mixing communication, or we were mixing communication, because we're talking about, okay, we're going to release this new process or this new benefit or whatever it is. And at the same time, we're starting a different process that we made last year. And at the same, suddenly they were mixing things, because people don't pay that much attention to emails, even to town halls, to everything. So it's when you over communicate, you are not sending the right message. So it will lose focus basically. So again, and this is my perception. So it's I'm
Right.
really open to debates and to but again, leadership is key. And it's not only formal leaders, it's informal leaders. So it's engaging leaders, first level. So I'm not talking about directors or middle management. I'm talking about team leaders that basically they are the front end and the first ones to be sure that the message, that can guarantee that the message is well explained and well shared, and the purpose of what's being done.
Yeah.
So what we made was there were several initiatives. If I start thinking, I will say like 10 channels, but more than the channels, there were two or three main communication principles. It's what it's day to day, and not only day to day. When you talk about performance appraisal, those practices, or even new processes that we're implementing, um, we always started by explaining it to the leaders, so team leaders, and in some cases, informal leaders. We went saying, okay, we know that in team A, this is a person that it will influence others because of his personality. And so, in an informal way, we went to explain him also what was going to happen. Not ever before the rest of the people. So we communicated, for example, to team leaders, and the team leader and the company at the same time had a communication to a generic communication, depending, it could be on the town hall, it could be in small team meetings, it could be several ways. But then we had an informal talk, or someone had an informal talk with that person to give an in-depth explanation on what was happening. And then there was more generic communication that was mainly through town halls. That was the main focus. We had one every quarter, and again, for example, those the town halls were mainly focused on what are you guys doing. So it's not only share what the company is doing. It was mainly, and when I say mainly, it was around 80% of the time was the teams presenting what they are doing in a technical level, not going in depth, of course, but showing the impact that they were having on the company.
Right.
And as you mentioned, agile, I think it's currently it's being it's not a question of being something already a standard. More than a standard, I would say that's becoming a part of the way people work. and not following the principles as a fixed thing, but as a principle and with good practices, and planning, okay, this is a good practice, I need to follow this. But if my client doesn't see added value, or if I don't have added value, or if I need to waive a part of the uh, Scrum Master advices because my client is in first place, then I should focus. I may lose, or I may not follow one of the best practices because the client comes first. And I'm saying best practice. I'm not talking of course about engaging people and sharing and being sure that we're not pushing too much or negotiating the deliverables, but sometimes you need to on some of those points, or sorry, not on those points, but on other points, you need to forget about them, or at least choose to go in a different way because our
Yeah.
client comes first, or our partner comes first more than our client.
Absolutely. So it's having not being fundamentalist about frameworks and methodologies, and being flexible, and trying to use those frameworks and methodologies to really serve the stakeholders of the business, because that's what we want at the end, which is to add value and to impact the well-being of those stakeholders, right? The client, the people, the shareholders, and everyone in the company. Awesome. And for those kind of companies who are scaling from 1B to 1 tree, there are different options for growth, and it can be even more challenging to grow after 1B in revenues. So what are some of the avenues for growth on your perspective?
I think that it's very challenged to grow on already big companies, but I'd say that the main thing is re-question themselves, not losing focus on what the company is good at. Of course, being aware of what's happening on the market. But I think that basically it's to be sure that you are focused on what you're doing well, and seeing new opportunities and seizing them, scaling internationally mainly.
Yeah.
When I say this, I think that there's such a fast pace of change everywhere that more established companies or bigger companies, they are much more difficult to maneuver and to change. So and even to be more efficient, because I think that we are talking about a lot about people, uh, but you see more and more the problem of reskilling, upskilling, and
Right.
that's a big challenge also on scaling and on being from a billion to a trillion. It's a big challenge and a big boat. It's very takes a long time to change direction.
Absolutely. Very good point. And so nowadays we discuss a lot the corporate scale up collaboration, and corporates are critical for scale ups because having 2 or 3 corporates as clients can have a huge impact on sales. And even in terms of partnerships, if we can leverage the channels of corporates, we can go to market much faster. And at the same time, it's very difficult for corporates to innovate by themselves, and having scale-ups as partners for that innovation, and in terms of helping them also with digital transformation, is really critical. So the question is, how do we make this partnership more effective for both sides and the win-win relationship? How important is for you this collaboration between scale-ups and corporates?
I think it's key, and it connects with the former point that we were discussing, how big companies scale or continue to grow. I think that partnering, it's not only key, but it will be a need. If you don't partner with other companies, it will you'll I will say I was going to say you drown or you sink, but I would say more than that, you're going to die. Companies, the new views, and on one side you have the legacy of the way you build your business, and you have companies just fresh ideas, new approaches, completely different ways of seeing things and of doing things. So partnering is key on all of the business and all of the areas. It's not only on the business side, but also on support functions. If you want, like in HR, you need to review your process. You need to be much more agile on the recruitment. You need to be more efficient and our all of the processes. The question where is, I would say that the key point is to respect the culture of the different companies. And when you are a big partner, or when you look at in a beta stage of a company, and you partner with them, and you help, basically you adjust your process, or you don't adjust your processes. You try that company to serve your existing process, so in a better way. So and I think that's not the best way to do it. It just challenge yourself the full process, and listen to the startups. And when I said respecting the culture, it's also, when we are talking about this, if we think that a startup has a completely different mindset and way of work than a corporate company. And when I'm saying this, there are some companies that even on compliance level, they cannot work that way. I would say that the first entry, the barrier of entry of a startup in a corporate level or in a corporate world, it's looking for the compliance. You need to do this, you need to do that, you need to follow this process. And that's the first barrier. So if we don't adjust our processes, if we don't think outside of the box, and if you're not flexible, basically, you won't you won't have the chance to grab the opportunity that company can allow you for growth, or for change. On the opposite side, on the startups, I think that it's, again, the versa, or the other processes that I were talking about. So it's looking for a big company, and not as the only client, as big as they can be, and keeping truth to themselves, and keeping their purpose very focused and very aligned, to be sure that they're not swallowed by a corporate culture that normally tends to smother all new ideas. And it's normal. It's not. I'm not saying it in a. It's negative, of course, but I'm not saying it in a negative way of saying that, okay, don't work with corporate or with big corporate companies. No, it's the opposite. Work with them, but keep truth to yourself and to the purpose of your business. And try not to depend too much on one company. And I'm not saying in a financial point of view. I'm saying on waiving, your purpose, because they have a big weight on what you're doing, on your revenue, and to pay the bills that are needed. But again, looking to the experience, even at Natixis, at not only Natixis, even before, working with different companies, and being very open, and I know what the market is doing in Porto, and in Portugal, Lisbon also, and other regions like Coimbra. They're very, very open. Big companies are getting very open, and trying to partner, not to buy the companies, but to partner with them. And that's, I'd say that's the key point of success.
Absolutely. Very good points. And we arrived to the last question of the show, and one of our favorite questions, which is, if you would have the opportunity to meet yourself, and let's say as your journey with Emergn is still early, let's say that you would be starting again at Natixis, what advice would you offer to Telmo at that time?
I would just tell you two things. I will answer on two advices in different moments. Starting at Natixis, I would say collaboration is key. And it was something that the 2.5 years that I was there, or almost 3 years that I was there, basically are the equivalent of probably 6 or 7 years in other companies, because of the pace and the fast way we're doing things. But not just doing things, just releasing things. It was making them with impact, leaving an impact. And probably the first 3 or 4 months being focused on execution, sometimes you forget about collaboration, because the fast way to do things is doing it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so team up, build a team, and not only looking to the people you lead, but also to your partners and the people you need to influence. So I'll tell myself that on the early days. And the second point was in the start of my career. I would say I would tell myself, on one side, you cannot change the world, but you can help shape the world. And the ability to not quit. And this is, I would say, that reflects who I am today, but it's a principle that I think that I need to have all the time. Is you won't change the world, but you will shape the world, influencing others, um, with energy, with enthusiasm, with being positive, not being full of, not seeing the negative points or the problems or the challenges that they're facing,
Yeah.
but be bold, keep believing, and work with others to make it happen.
That's awesome. Telmo, thank you for sharing your experience with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your invite. I hope that it will be a useful talk and a useful podcast, so people can listen. And if you have any other questions anytime, or if you need anything from my side, please connect with me or reach me. I think that you can provide my contact to people. Um, I'll share my thoughts, my ways of thinking, and my experience, basically, so each person can listen, understand, and make their own way, because you cannot ever copy an experience, because it's not the same context. So I'm
Absolutely.
fully available to share anything that's needed.
Absolutely. Thanks so much again, Telmo, and to our community. Thanks for being on that side. We keep bringing you the best of the best so you can leverage their lessons and avoid their mistakes. See you soon and keep scaling.